All right, I guess we'll get started. Thanks for coming out. I appreciate it. I guess before we jump into Terry Vogel's talk, I just wanted to just mention a couple of quick things. So I'm just going to send the sign-up sheet around, just so you guys know what we use this for. It's just, I mean, the big thing is if you haven't been here before, you don't have your email address, and you want us to keep in touch with you via email, just provide an email address. It's also nice just to know who's been to a meeting, so I'll pass that down. Feel free to put your name and email address on there. And if at any time you want me to stop emailing you, just send me an email and say stop emailing me, and I'll take you off my list. Do we have any first-timers, first-time Audubon attendees? And you guys said this is your first time here? You're going to? I promised on Facebook a free cup of coffee. You got free cup of coffee, anyway, so feel free to come up and grab. There's some water up here too, and if you guys want some water, coffee, come up and grab it. I guess a couple of things. I know Rolf is out of town. He'd be here. We've been working on some potential field trips, some things to do here in the spring. I guess I just wanted to throw out some of the ideas that we've had and comment here or contact us later. But you know, one thing we're looking at going out and watching the prairie chickens do their thing. Dan Starski's putting up a new improved, bigger blind out at the spot that he is responsible for. And so we've been talking to him about maybe getting something going relatively soon and organize a trip out there to do that. And so I'll when we get something more locked up, I'll put something out on the email to Grand City Bird Club and on the Facebook page as well. We've also been got a good contact at Glacial Ridge National Wildlife Refuge. Somebody that Rolf and I didn't know before. I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but she was really excited to go across, getting in touch. So this is my job, is to reach out to people like you. So she was really excited. So hopefully we can organize a trip out there here in the spring. Things dry up a little bit, which will be tomorrow, I guess. Things are going. So So that's exciting. So that's a couple of things we're looking at. And then for next month's meeting, we've already got a speaker lined up. Our own David Lambeth is going to do a talk on, and I'll get this out on the, hey, come on in. Come out, say goodbye. Dave's going to speak on things you can do to attract birds to your yard. Spring's coming, landscaping. I know I've got some desires to do some things in my yard to make it more bird friendly, and Dave's going to share some of those things at next month's meeting. So, and again, I'll get stuff out via email and on Facebook. So, one of the things I just wanted to mention, there's not a whole lot to talk about here in terms of details, but since this is Audubon Society and this organization reached out to Audubon, I want to at least just mention it in the meeting. A company by the name of Marcel Day, who's a consulting firm out of Fredericksburg, Virginia, reached out to Audubon Dakotas through, I believe, through Marshall Johnson, and then that was through Ralph and David, and then ultimately myself. And they're doing what's called a Installation Complex Approach and Management Action Plan for the Air Force Base. And this is, as far as I understand, this is something that they're doing at all the Air Force bases around the country. They've done like 40 of these or something like that, and they've got like 12 more to do. And Grand Forks Air Force Base is kind of on the docket right now. And what it is it's basically, I guess for lack of a better term, there's a number of areas they look at, and essentially they're looking at the Air Force Base in connection to the community and sort of impact areas on the community. So they look at things like, one of the categories is unexplored ordinances, for example. I think air traffic is one of the things, but when it comes to Audubon, conservation and habitat is one of the key points in this plan. And so that was kind of our purpose for reaching out to us. And so we sat down today at our office, and it was more of just like a conversation about, what are our interests and what are some things about that are specific to this area and the Air Force Base that maybe they should be aware of. And they seem to be really keyed in on one particular area of the Air Force Base, which is just north of the runway. So if you look at a Google map picture and look at the Air Force Base, north of the runway, between the runway and the runway, I have a Google Earth here. The runway is here, Turtle River comes like this, and there's this area kind of between. And they focused in a lot of that. So we talked about prairie chickens, we talked about the riparian habitat along the river there, and I think we talked about spreads pivot at one point. And they asked a lot of questions about money being available to potentially protect that habitat. And I don't know, Dave, you have anything to add?
Well, there was a concern about the impact of, I guess, the Air Force and so on endangered and threatened species. The greater prairie chicken would be the most notable or obvious one of those. And I think we emphasized the Air Force does, the Air Base does occupy a nice chunk of the grassland, and just the fact they're there and keeping it in grass is, I think, quite important. And beyond the boundaries, I guess the technical boundaries of the base, as Matt is suggesting here, they're wondering about how to manage that area and how to get cooperation with other agencies and bring in money maybe and provide incentives to manage that as a friendly turf for them. I think the concerns is that the approaches to the runways is sort of a hazardous area. Accidents do happen, planes do go down short of the runway or crash when they take off. And they don't obviously want a housing complex in that area because it's something that hazard.
So it was a good discussion and not a lot of.
Yeah. So I don't know for sure where this is going to go. Sometimes the Air Force Base gives up a base, And in some notable cases, that land has gone into conservation program of some kind.
So I guess it was just, and they're meeting with, I don't know how many different organizations on all these different points. And it was just, I guess it was nice to see that conservation habitat is one of the areas, and that we're part of the conversation. I think that's important. And they seem, and this particular firm, they're in tight with the DoD, but their founder, they kind of come out of an environmental conservation. That's kind of their niche within the consulting arena, as far as I can tell from their website and their founder. So this is they seem to be somewhat comfortable in this arena. So it's nice to see anyway, and I just wanted to make you guys aware of it, that if you want to learn more or talk more about it, or be more involved with any future conversations, I don't know if there will be or what the next steps are. We were just asked to sit down and share information, and we did. Marshall Johnson from Audubon Dakotas, the executive director of Vogel, came up, so it was Marshall, David, and myself that met with 2 individuals from Marshall Day. So I just want to make you guys aware of that. And, I think that's all I have. Anybody else got anything to add? Have they seen anything cool lately? Notables? No, I've been out following we've seen a lot of dead raptors lately. I saw another one now. Snowy owl, electrocuted. It's kind of interesting. Long-eared owl, bald eagle, great horned owl. Fortunately didn't make it. Now a snowy owl.
It's like an exceptional number in a short time. But no particular reason. Except for those raptors are on the move. We know that. So starting to migrate.
Yeah. Well, with that, I would like to introduce Perry Vogel, and as you guys seen on my email, I'm not sure many of you are familiar with Perry. Perry is the president and co-founder of the Purple Martin Association of the Dakotas, and he's involved with the Red River Valley Purple Martin project, which includes 2 public conservation sites located in the Greenway of Greater Grand Forks and Turtle River State Park. And I'm just looking on some eBird, and I'm sure Perry will go over some of this. Like, well, when are they coming? So I checked eBird, and it looks like late April.
Yeah, April 20th.
Yeah, it looks like 24th is the earliest we've had, and then 27th and 30th, and then it kind of takes off from there. And it looks like, and I was checking the North Dakota bird notes, just kind of another area that's kept in. They didn't have, Grand Forks County didn't have an early arrival, but we were indicated in spring peak numbers in 1973. In May 12th, 1973, we had 30 was the spring peak, and then latest fall departure was in October. So they're coming, and spring's coming. So with that, I'll turn it over to Perry.
First of all, I'd like to thank Grand Forks Audubon for having me come and present all things Purple Martin. Extend a special welcome or thank you to Matthew Spoor for inviting me. One thing I want to let you all know that this isn't just a real presentation of scientific literature, and we're not going to be going through pages and pages of research. I want to make this as interactive as I can, and so what we've done tonight is we're also streaming this live on YouTube, and we have my son here tonight, which is a pleasure for me because he's heard it all before. So it's nice that he came, and he was my technical person, so he can let me know if there's anybody tweeting me, and we can answer those questions right away online as well. If you have questions as we go along, please just let me know. We're going to have a question and answer session at the end, but also if there's anything that pops to mind while I'm speaking, just flag me down, and we'll sure try to get those questions answered right away. First thing, as any person who loves birds, you want to know how to attract birds. And you know, there's certain methods with different birds that you can successfully attract birds with bird feeders and water features and, you know, trees and all sorts of, you know, different methods of attracting birds. But there's only one real good way of attracting purple martins to your yard, and that's by putting up a purple martin house. Purple martins originally nested in tree snags, and basically when, you know, before man came to the United States, or before man started attracting purple martins to artificial nesting sites, they used to nest out in the wild, just like every other bird. And they used to nest out in old woodpecker cavities that were excavated out of tree snags. And you know, we're in the northwestern part of North Minnesota. There's the aspen parkland, where the prairie fires are fighting the aspen. So the prairie fires would push back the aspen. They would leave these tree snags. A couple of years later, you know, the woodpeckers would move in, excavate some cavities, either for their own nesting or for their food source. And then years later, purple martins would move into these old abandoned cavities. Of course, then those trees would eventually deteriorate enough that they would fall over, and then the purple martins would move on, and new trees would, you know, grow. And you know, it was just never it was a never changing cycle with purple martins. So they got kind of used to having some different nesting sites and moving around. So there's some shifting that's been going on for centuries. Back in the day, in the 17th century, Native Americans started attracting purple martins to their gardens because they would chase off the crows from their drying fields. So they'd put up gourds for purple martins, very similar to the one that I have here. This is just a natural gourd that I've kind of modified to include you know, an access port that you can open it up and look into. But they would use these gourds, similar to these, for their drinking water. Purple martins have a natural curiosity, so they will, you know, look for nesting sites, and they found out that purple martins were nesting in their watering containers. And when they did, they started putting up these gourds for their nesting sites, and that was the beginning of attracting purple martins to an artificial nesting site. Now that in itself wasn't so bad, but then when European settlers came to the United States, they came and they cut down all the tree snags. They didn't think that any tree snags really had anything to do, anything good to serve. They cut them up for lumber, built houses with them, used them for firewood, whatever they used them for. Used them all up. Well, all the natural tree cavities were basically demolished. All of the native and virgin trees and forests that we had in the United States have all been cut down and either regrown, leaving the purple martins kind of out of a home. And so when, of course, purple martins are very friendly, very nice to have in your yard. You know, European settlers soon put up houses made out of wood, and purple martins started you know, moving into those houses. And I've got a couple of examples of houses that we have now today. Way back then, they used to build these great big castles, and they used to paint them white, just like our White House. And that's how purple martins got attracted to the color white. So if you've got a purple martin house and it's painted red, or if it's dark blue or something, it's probably very unlikely to actually attract a purple martin. And some of them will, but the majority of purple martin houses that attract purple martins are white. And the white serves really two purposes. It reflects the heat, and it attracts purple martins. On the Greenway, we've got a site very similar to the tree snag that you saw right in the previous picture. It's a single house that's about 80 to 90 feet away from the nearest tall tree. A nice open area for them. The difference is we use what they call the McEwen crescent. That's a 3-inch circle that has basically 1 3/6 1 3/16 of an inch opening. And the reason why we use that opening is to deter European starlings. European starlings were introduced into the United States in the early 1900s. They released 50 birds because they were one of the birds mentioned in Shakespeare's work in Central Park, and in 50 years they had populated from coast to coast with over 2 million European starlings. European starlings have decimated native nesting cavity birds, including purple martins and other native nesting cavity birds such as tree swallows and some types of woodpeckers and chimney swifts. The modern day houses that we use today will rise up and lower on a pole. Makes it for a real easy way to look at the young, check out what's happening with the purple martins, clean out the systems at the end of the year, and it's been a really the site on the Greenway has been a really great site. Last year, I believe we had about I believe they had 8 pair out there, and I don't have the exact numbers on the number of young that they fledged. Sure. It's located on the Greenway of Grand Forks. If you go on 13th Avenue and go straight east, you're going to come to Belmont Road and the intersection of Belmont Road and 13th Avenue. And there's a sliding hill and a parking lot. Yep. So right now, since it was winter, the house is completely down. So all that you'll see is a little cement spot where we put the post in and set the house up. We take it down every year so that nobody disturbs it in the wintertime. One of the tricks that I've used in attracting purple martins is to fake them out a little bit. If you don't have purple martins around, you can use what I call a mudding technique. And I take a paint stick and mix up some garden mud to the consistency of browning powder, and basically stick that paint stick into that hole, and I dump it off and scrape it out. And it just puts a little mud layer on the inside of the entrance hole. When a purple martin sticks their head in there, they think, oh, somebody else has nested here possibly before. And you know, some people say it works, some people say it doesn't. It sure doesn't hurt to try. It's worked for me in the past. The site out at Turtle River, they had 1 nesting pair the year before I took over the site, and by the end of the year they had 19 birds that were flying around that site. So that was just one of the methods that I use, is just getting some mud in there. It isn't a scientific study that it's going to attract your purple martins. I guess what I believe is that the purple martins really want to be with their friends. They're a colonial nester, which means that they nest in groups, not singly like a tree swallow. So if you can convince them that your site is something that's been used before, it's certainly worth a try. This is what my site looked like in 2011. This was the summer before I co-founded the organization. I had 34 units that I offered. They laid 159 eggs and fledged 154 eggs and fledged 109 young.
This is in your yard.
This is in my backyard, yep, in Grand Forks. I had a combination of gourds. This here in the center that looks like a telephone wire or a telephone antenna is just a perching tree for the purple martins to rest on. And both of those, the 6 gourds and the house with the 4 gourds underneath, both of those rise and lower with the use of a winch and pulley. Now the year after 2012, I co-founded the association in December of 2011 and got officially, going as an organization in 2012. And I decided that it was time to get these purple martins out into the public instead of just in my backyard. So I reduced the size of my colony. If you look at this house, it was built in 3 different levels, and this is actually one of the pieces, and 4 of these homes built, or 4 of these units four of these units bolt together around the post, and then they rise up and down on the pulley system. I basically reduced it down 2 levels, and I just have the one level and the roof. So I currently have 14. I offer 14 units, and 14 units including all of the gourds. So it's a very nice small site. It's sustainable. It's appropriate for the size yard I have. And once I got the colony started out at Turtle River, and the colony started at the Greenway, the martins from my residents probably all just relocated there. Many of the birds that you feed in your backyard are something you can put up a feeder, and then within a couple of hours or a couple of days, you can get birds to come to your backyard. Purple martins are not one of those birds. You can't put up a bird bath or a bird feeder really to attract purple martins. But once you've got purple martins, you can certainly put up a bed and breakfast feeder for them. This is a raised platform that sits about 6 feet off, or 6 to 8 feet off the ground. And what I fill in this feeder is I put ground up oyster shells, sand, and also eggshells. And I just keep any eggshells that I have or my in-laws have, and we just put them in a barrel. A lot of people talk about making sure that you have your eggshells boiled and cleaned and disinfected. They don't want salmonella to get in, to the birds. That's certainly an option. You put them on, put them in the oven and heat them up, and just bake off anything that might be harmful to the birds. Purple martins won't drink at your bird bath, yet I'm going to tell you that 4 years ago I had a purple martin swoop down at my bird bath and grab a drink. Bird baths don't really attract purple martins, but I have seen them use them. They say that purple martins exclusively drink on the wing, which would mean that they can either drive by a puddle, or not drive by, fly by a puddle or a swimming pool and take a drink. One of the this is where I lose the most of my crowd, is when I talk about controlling European starlings and house sparrows. One of the unfortunate facts about being a purple martin landlord is either you can have a successful purple martin colony, or you can have a successful house sparrow colony. In one of the years when I first started my purple martin colony, I started with 20 unit house. And I left for the 4th of July. So I left, I suppose on a Friday, and I came back on a Sunday. And I had 5 house sparrow nests with eggs in my house. Now, that was because my purple martin colony wasn't strong enough at the time to battle off the English house sparrows. Over the years, you basically have to euthanize English house sparrows. The lucky thing is, with the McEwen crescents that I showed you earlier, these crescent-shaped entrance holes will prevent the European starlings from entering. Their bellies are too big and their legs are too long, so they just can't fit through that hole, yet the purple martins can slide right in once they've worked at it a while. Now, I know a lot of people are concerned that, the purple martin, they have to work at, getting into this hole. Is it really fair to them? Well, I mean, yeah, I think it's fair to them, and I started my colony with 100% McEwen crescents. And the reason I did is because I knew the starling population was going to be prohibited for me to have a successful colony. So that's what I did. The Migratory Treaty Act of 1918 protects all migratory birds. The European starling and the English house sparrow. The European starling and the house sparrow are not protected under that act. There are a few other birds, but they don't really apply here. So when we're talking about protecting purple martins, we're saying, you know, the only two birds that you are going to protect purple martins from are English house sparrows and European starlings, and you can euthanize those too. Now, if you have a hawk problem or you have a owl problem or anything of that sort, you have to use different passive control methods. There is no acceptable way of getting rid of a hawk legally, and it is definitely don't, please don't come telling me 3 months after this presentation that I said you need to protect the purple martins and tell me that you took care of a hawk. I really can't. I really can't say that I would ever endorse that. European starling looks very similar to a purple martin, but it is a little bit bigger and it's a little bit fatter. Longer legs. It's got a yellow beak, and very destructive to purple martins. Why you have to protect the purple martin from the European starling is because they'll just go into a nest. They'll either kill the adult or kill the babies. English house sparrows, or house sparrows, I always call them English house sparrows. They're really only house sparrows. The best way I've found to control those is to trap them. I use like a nest insert box trap, and what I'll do is I will take their nesting material and actually hide the trap in the nesting material, and I put a little bit of nesting material inside of the box. And if the house sparrow has eggs, I'll certainly put those eggs inside here. And when the house sparrow goes in, the door closes, and within a couple hours, you can take the box off and humanely get rid of the house sparrow. This is just another picture of how those house sparrow or nest box traps work in the purple martin boxes. It actually works pretty good. Getting started as a purple martin landlord. Well, you know, discussed a little earlier. What do you need? You need to get a house. That's really your first step. I don't recommend anything under 6 units, and I don't recommend anything over 14 to start. Now, if you've got the space to have more than 14, certainly you're welcome to do that. You know, if you're in a city, you know, you might get some complaints if you have more than that, but certainly if you're out in a farmstead or you're out in the open, go ahead and you can have as many as you want, as you can reasonably manage. The reason why I say reasonably manage is because the expectation is that you get a manageable house that you can rise and lower, and you can check those babies, those eggs, once a week. Now, we recommend that you participate in the Project Martin Watch, which is the Purple Martin Conservation Association's their public study, or their just lost the word, citizen science project, right? You basically record your number of eggs, your number of young, the date they laid eggs, the date that they fledged, and you send it into the PMCA, and they compile those results and they put them on the map. That's really, you know, the true best way to do nest checks. Now, last year I went on a trip and I was gone for 10 days, so my results were not really accurate. PMCA really couldn't use them because there was that gap. So I do understand that it's sometimes not always, you're not always going to get your little dot on the map, but I always encourage people to participate in that program. what really makes a purple martin landlord is once you have a purple martin. You have a purple martin house, you're trying, you're attempting to be a purple martin landlord. But when you see a female dragging in sticks to your purple martin house, then you can almost call yourself a purple martin landlord. And when you have a male who's standing on your apricot tree or a tree nearby at the neighbors and pulling off green leaves, you know that you're almost ready to get some eggs. And as soon as you get those little white eggs, then you can call yourself a purple martin landlord. Now, that doesn't mean that your purple martins are going to come back year after year, but your chances have raised dramatically. Purple martins will return to the same location if they have successfully fledged their young. Now, if this nest gets destroyed by a European starling or a house sparrow, that purple martin pair will try to find a different place to nest next year. Purple martin, now I said purple martin pair, but both of those birds are not necessarily monogamous in their lifetime. They are paired up for the year, and each, the male and the female, will seek out new housing and new partners next year. And as soon as you have those babies, this is the best time to make sure that anytime you have a house sparrow pestering your site, that you don't make your house sparrow angry. Okay, so if you've got a house sparrow that's already laid eggs, you just can't get them. You know, in Grand Forks, you can't use a pellet gun in town. You've got to use you know, other methods to get them, and that's why I brought out those traps. But if you live on a farmstead, certainly you can use a pellet gun to get rid of those house sparrows. But at this point, when you got young, you don't want to make those purple or those house sparrows mad, because they will go into those nest boxes and they will just take those babies and throw them out. And I've seen it time after time again, where I have a few babies and a sparrow that starts giving me trouble, and I find little babies on the ground. When your purple martin young are about this size, this is about the best size, because you know you've almost made it. You know, they almost look fully feathered, fully adult. The little bit of yellow on the side of the mouth is almost gone. You know that they're about ready to leave. Purple martins will come in April, about the 20th of April. They will spend a whole month just lounging around, fattening themselves up, getting used to the environment, making sure that they're eating as many insects as they can. You'll see them at the feeding trays. They won't even start nest building for an entire month, so 30 days. After that, it'll take about 7 to 10 days for them to start building a nest. You'll see the females dragging in the sticks. Once they start putting in the green leaves, you know that they're about ready to start laying eggs. The purple martin male will sing what they call the dawn song, and it is one of the most incredible songs that you'll ever hear from a bird, because they perform this high above your colony, and it is just loud because it's perfectly quiet before the sun rises. And I've only experienced it twice my whole career. I've had purple martin since 2001, but it is really an incredible sounding song. And that is you can usually catch them doing that dawn song right around the time those green leaves start showing up in those nests. These young were about 2 days away from fledging, and I probably shouldn't have been even looking at the house at the time, but I was doing a chronological series of pictures in 2005 from egg to fledging. I was taking pictures of this same nest day after day. One of the things that there's with anything with wildlife, there's always waste. This is a female that is dropping a fecal sac from probably a nest about the size of those birds. Very early on, the adult purple martins will consume the feces of their young, And once it gets to be a bigger fecal sac, they will start carrying it out. And then at the very end, the last week or so, they'll stop carrying out the fecal sacs entirely. They'll just, the young will just, leave their waste in the nest. So that's why it's really important to have a house that you can maintain, so that you can open it up with a door. And at the end of the year, I take my hoe and my water hose, and I just pull out all that nesting material, throw it in the garbage, and then I spray it out with water and a 10% bleach solution, and then you can close it up and dry it out, and martins will be happy that you did it, because it it gets rid of all of the waste. It gets rid of all of the pesting, the pests. In Minnesota, they've been having some trouble with bullflies over the last couple of years, so it eliminates any of that possibility that any of those insects would go from one year to the next. This is a picture of me when the Herald came out. Brad Dockington did an article a couple of years ago, and he snapped that photo, and that's my site in 2012 after I had reduced its size. And you can see how it's it's eye level. You can reach right in, you can get in, and it just makes for a real easy place. I have it right off the side of my garden. One of the things that purple martins like is being near humans, and the reason is because it keeps the pests, or keeps the predators away. Raccoon, whether that be raccoon, squirrel, or anything. Any questions?
So what's, when you're talking about these units, what's a single unit? What's the size of a single unit?
Okay, so the size of this unit is 11 inches by 7.5 inches by 7.5. The old standard was a 6x6 box, 6x6x6. Purple martins will lay anywhere between 3 and 8 eggs. And if they are a 7.5-inch bird, you can hardly get a 7.5-inch bird in a 6x6 unit. So the 6x6 units are no longer feasible. I mean, they probably never work. So the recommended size now is at least, well, they say 12 inches deep and 7 inches wide, or 6 inches wide. But if you go with standard cut lumber, you can go with, I think it's 7.5 and 11 inches deep. And the reason why 11 inches deep is so handy is because if you do have problems with an owl, the owl isn't a problem, because they can reach in there all they want. They're probably not going to be able to reach out purple martin young from the unit itself. The thing is with Cooper's hawks, they are, I've had a Cooper's hawk visiting. I look back at my records. I've had a Cooper's hawk visiting my site since 2003. Catches a few birds, and that's perfectly okay with me, because it narrows out the population from the weak. I had sat out in the yard in 2008 with my son. We laid out a blanket. We were watching the birds come in at night, and there was this one lonely, the fledgling was coming back, and he was trying to get in, and he couldn't get in. He flew over to the neighbor's garage a couple of times. Then he'd fly back to the house, and then one time he flew over to the neighbor's garage, and now all of a sudden I looked in the corner of my eye, and Cooper's hawk just flew in, grabbed him, and took him away. And it was like, well, that was nature at its best, because he was having trouble, getting in, maneuvering into these units, and there were other birds that were long into, to go to sleep at night already. So
What's the size of your porch there?
I think it's about 3 inches long. And then I think this was, if I remember right, 5.5 inches wide.
Your hole is 3 inches?
Yeah, this is the hole is fashioned out of a 3-inch circle, and then it's 1 3/16 inch of a hole. So from the top of that 3-inch circle, so it's not actually a half circle, it's a 3-inch circle, and then 1 3/16 of an inch. And not a millimeter more, not a millimeter less, because if a millimeter more, you get the European starlings in, and a millimeter less, you don't get the purple martins in. Yeah, it's one of those things. There's other different. I actually don't have it. I didn't grab that example. There are different shaped units or holes that they have, and one looks like a bat, and the others look, a little different. But this is a simple one to cut out with a jigsaw. I worked for Acme Electric for 15 years, so I had access to tools, and it was it was great. I used a roto zip and just created a larger template, and then just did roto zip on all the holes for the doors. Yeah, and it works out great.
How do you set up to put it up and down with your foliage?
Yeah, you can either fashion like a metal plate on the bottom where everything sits on, or you can take some angle iron and kind of fashion something, bolting it all together. That's kind of what I wound up doing in the later years. It's just angle iron, 4 pieces bolted together. I put, I think it's, with this house, I think I used 3/8 or 1/4 inch cable and a wire cable. And if you use the stuff that's coated, it doesn't work as good. So non-coated wire cable, and then just a brake winch, and just wind it up on there, and then you hook it up with the hooks and eyes and all that kind of stuff, and it just goes up and down. And you got to pull. I've got a pulley on the top and a pulley on the bottom because I don't want the cable ding 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 in the wind. It just would. Couldn't handle that, so I definitely put the cable inside of the pole so that when I've got it all the way up, I only have about this much cable on the bottom sticking out, and on the top it's all the way up to the top with there's a little peak that a little pergola that I have on the top of my house that just kind of protects that cable.
You said something about eggshells and oyster shells or sand. Why?
Yep. Eggs, oyster shells, and sand. Purple martins are exclusive insectivores, which means that they eat exclusively insects, and insects have exoskeletons. So in order for them to get the most nutrients out of those insects, they use those rough, coarse materials to kind of grind up the insects. The calcium in both the oyster shells and the eggshells help the female lay better, stronger eggs. Better, stronger eggs that are, less likely to break. The bones of the birds are healthier and stronger, and it's just a dietary supplement. Is basically what that amounts to.
So you have that in a feeder outside now?
Yep, that was that feeder that I showed you where I had all those males, and they were. Yep, I just have it just right next to. Right next to my colony. I've got basically 3 poles. I've got the feeder tray, I've got the gourd rack, and I've got the perching tree, and then I've got the house. And they just kind of go one up from the other.
Can you talk a little bit about the importance of height of a crescent above your
perch? Okay, so the crescent hole is actually 1/4 of an inch above the floor of the porch. And the reason why that is because the European starlings have those longer legs. If you put it lower than that, the European starlings can start squeezing in because they can just suck in their guts. From the inside, now some people have a tray that they'll put in their units, so you kind of have to be careful with the unit, the height. The inside height isn't as important. I have almost an inch, from the floor on the inside, and I've never had any problems with purple martins getting stuck in there or anything, but I also usually put a little bit of mud in there so that helps give them a little bit of traction. So on this example of gourd, I actually have this one a little bit lower than I probably should. I think I should have had it up a little higher. I think they recommended it, and then I wasn't reading the instructions. These are what they call owl guards, and they work equally as well for the Cooper's hawks. So these are what I'm talking about when I'm saying passive methods in order to prevent owls and Cooper's hawks from damaging your colonies. You know, these are just wires that are basically going to prevent an owl from being able to reach in there. It's going to give a little extra room. And these are artificial gourds. I mean, some people really like the natural gourds. I'm personally partial to the artificial gourds because I can take this gourd, I will dump out the contents at the end of the year, throw it into the 10% bleach solution at night. In the morning, I will take it out of the 10% bleach solution, spray it off, and hang it to dry. That's all there is maintenance for these. And that takes care of, all of the, anything that was in there. Whereas the natural gourds, and I brought this one in particular, is because, it's seen its better day. What I'm supposed to do with this now is I'm supposed to take this and I'm supposed to put it into a copper sulfate solution to harden it again, dry it, peel it, prime it, repaint it, and it's a lot more maintenance. But the purple martins like these as well. These are if you really enjoy being creative and you like painting, and certainly these are a great option. They're a little bit less expensive, or actually quite a bit less expensive initially, but I think you lose that in the amount of time and money that you need to spend to keep these maintained. But I've used both. I just prefer the other ones because my time is a little bit more limited as I started having kids.
Where'd you get those artificial gourds?
The artificial gourds, you can pick those up from the Purple Martin Conservation Association. They've got the best selection. The Purple Martin Marketplace. They'll send you out a catalog a couple times, well, once a year at least. And actually, if you want, you can actually have mine. Another thing with Purple Martins, there's a great resource. Purple Martin Conservation Association puts out a quarterly journal. It is usually 25 pages long, and there is, it's 30 pages long, and there is no advertising in here. It is all information from landlords, information from the scientific research. We're lucky. Purple Martin Association of the Dakotas is lucky that we've got like a national organization that we're partnering with. We do the local stuff, North and South Dakota. We're not a big organization, but we're doing research in South Dakota for Purple Martin Conservation Association. And one of the really neat things is that what I'm going to be talking about next here real quickly, and that's their and that's the geolocator research. And I think they gave us something like 19 geolocators last year or something like that to do their research with. And then we'll get some of those results and we'll publish them to our small group of associates, and get people interested in purple martins, because the fact about purple martins is that their habitat is gone, so they're dependent on humans for housing, And if we don't do something in North and South Dakota, they're likely to be gone in 50 years because they've been in decline in Minnesota. I think they say their decline was 87% since the 1960s. I mean, in Minnesota, they're species of special concern. North Dakota's statistics were low, so I don't know how low that really is, but they were low to begin with. South Dakota, they're only we're at the western edge of their breeding range. So I really, I think it's really important that the purple martins are taken care of because they do provide benefits. I mean, they're like insect vacuums of the sky. I mean, I've noticed over the years, 2 weeks after my purple martins leave, I mean, the insect population in my backyard just goes up like you wouldn't believe. And that's the big moths, the big dragonflies, anything big, bad, and ugly flying around is really what I'm concerned about. 30 years ago, I think the advertisements were, purple martins eat, 10,000 mosquitoes a day or whatever. Well, truth of the fact is that, purple martins and mosquitoes very rarely are out at the same time. Purple martins feed during the day, mosquitoes feed at night. So there's this discrepancy.
What's the relationship though between the spraying of mosquitoes, because it also kills the butterflies and the dragonflies and that sort of thing. So how does that, when they spray the city for?
Purple martins will go up to about a 5-mile radius to get food. So, a lot of people say, oh, you need to have water close by. Well, it's nice if you live on a lake. That's great. That's a great location for them, and it makes it easier for them. But it's not really necessary. I live in Grand Forks. Anywhere in Grand Forks is a good place for purple martins. Anywhere, because we're always about a half a mile from a water source. Anywhere in the prairie potholes region of North or South Dakota is a great place for purple martin because it's the prairie potholes. There's potholes everywhere where purple martins can get a drink of water or a water source where their insect populations would thrive and produce.
You say any place is good, but what about the older part of the town where you got too many trees
Okay.
to get a successful martin colony?
Right.
Like my place.
So trees are another thing. Any place in Grand Forks that's the right, that you've got open space. I mean, if you follow the guidelines, you're supposed to be 50 feet away from trees, and you can raise your house above trees, but then you're more susceptible to wind. The house on the Greenway is in the old part of Grand Forks. We were lucky in that, there's this Greenway out of a tragedy, but it made a perfect habitat for purple martins because it's wide open space. There's no trees that are going to be planted on that levee.
And you said it's 50-foot radius?
Yeah, 50 feet in any direction is really what they say.
Is it like it's not a complete radius necessarily, or is it like half?
They like it to be a complete radius because then they come in from all directions. Yep. And the thing is, if you got a tree right next door, you got hawks and owls that can hide in those trees. So it just gives the purple martins a better chance of getting away from any birds birds of prey that are going to give them any trouble.
Do you think the use of the dawn song played, early morning around your house you're trying to get martins in?
I do not have experience using the dawn song. I have heard many people that have used it and they swear by it. So that's one of the things that, it's a tool. All of these things are tools. There's no one right answer, and that's for sure. That's where you can try the dawn song. You can try playing just the daytime chatter CD. They've got one of those. I've got a lady in Thief River Falls who had martins a couple of years ago, and she said all of a sudden they just left. And then I, asked her some questions and asked her, what was going on, or if she had any other trouble. And she's like, yeah, we had raccoons that were really getting into our bird feeders at the time. Well, that's probably what got into your purple martin house. Purple martins failed that year, and then they probably left. So, I set up a house at her place. I took down her old housing and set up a new housing system just last summer. And I don't think she attracted martins last summer. So we're going to try again this summer. But she's got a perfect place for them. It's just that she is out of town. And the more human activity that is what they like. That's where I think the Greenway site really worked out great, because it was close to the sledding hill and the walking paths and all that kind of stuff. There's people all around there most of the time, even if it's the cop car sitting in the parking lot. That's been just such a blessing for me, because houses, nobody has even so much as bothered that housing. And every time I go by and lower it, there's people that stop by and talk to me about it. So I do.
Advertise when you put it up this year, so people can come.
Yeah, we could do that. Yeah. So one of the things that we're doing with purple martins in South Dakota is we're tracking them. And 20 years ago, tracking purple martins was a real labor-intensive operation. Now it's not any easier, but there are some. Used to put these teeny tiny little bands on the purple martins, and you would hope that you would get one back if you banded 5,000. Yeah, because a lot of times these would wind up in an owl pellet or wherever. And people would recover them. Nowadays, we do have a little different way of doing it, and we can track exactly where they have migrated, all the way down to Brazil, through Central America, through Mexico, through Louisiana, and back up to the United States. And what they are is they're geolocators. They're backpacks for purple martins. They're actually sensitive to the sunrise and sunset, and from that information, we can put that information into a computer. We retrieve that geolocator off that martin again the year after it comes back, and put it into the computer, and we can basically track exactly where they were. This map is the pair, the female to that male. And you will see that this graph is completely different. She took a completely different route all the way down to Brazil and came back to the United States to the same exact breeding colony, not taking the same route as the male she was paired with. This is a picture of Paul enjoying the manga. Paul is the co-founder with me. He's a research guy, and his wife is very active and helps us out with recording and the information. This year we're going to be having the Outdoor Purple Martin Festival on June 13th in Columbia, South Dakota, right at his site. The pictures that you see on our website, purplemartindakotas.org, are of his colony.
Can I ask you a question about
Sure.
migration?
Sure.
When do they start heading back?
Okay, sure. Purple martins actually start heading back to the United States as early as Christmas, but they don't make it to the United States. Now, that means the southern martins that are returning to the tip of Florida. Purple martins make the trip back to the United States in as little as 13 days. That's an amazing, for a 55-gram bird to make that migration back from the time they leave their wintering grounds to the time that they're in their breeding colony in South Dakota. We've recorded them as little as 13 days. Now, going back down to migrate back south, they do take a little longer, anywhere between 30 to 45 days to get back to their wintering grounds. So. One of the things that's kind of interesting about purple martins, there's, I always joke about this before I come to a presentation. I always say, should I wear my purple shirt? I didn't come here wearing my purple shirt. Purple martins are not actually purple. Their feathers are actually black and gray. Found a feather on the ground. It was one of those that was just lost or whatever, and I just scanned it in, and this is the bottom side of that feather and the top side of the feather, and what makes the purple martin's feather shine purple is iridescence. It's just like a rainbow in that it bends the light and isn't really a pigmentation of the feather at all. That is a purple martin egg that you will find sometime when you know that you've got a sparrow problem that's been pestering your martins and is mad for whatever reason, wants their nest site. And you'll find those by, patrolling the purple martin area, 10, 20 feet from underneath the site. Just a picture of a broken purple martin egg with a classic sparrow beak type look in it, shape in it. Sparrow probably just, found that nest, that egg in their nest, or that they thought it was their nest, and just threw it out on the ground. That's one less purple martin that we were going to have. This picture was taken the day I decided that it was time to put purple martins out into the community. Our slogan at Purple Martin Association of the Dakotas is purple martins in every town. I have spent countless hours with my birds. They're wonderful. They'll sing to me. They'll stay out there when I'm out there. You develop a friendship with them. It's wonderful to be a purple martin landlord, and I'm so grateful that I am. And I encourage people to involve their children. My mom is 79 years old this year, and she still has a purple martin colony. And she keeps on talking about getting rid of it, but she never has. She's been a landlord when my dad was alive. They started in 1985, and they've had martins at their place. And they've gone through the evolution of going from a house that you take the farm hand and you put it on a pole, and then at the end of the year, you take your wire hanger or you find a small kid to reach in there and pull out the nesting material. And I was that small kid. I was probably as small as my son, and I didn't really care for purple martins as a kid. But now with the newer techniques, the better ways of doing things, I encourage people to give it a try. If you've got the right location, give it a try. And the location is really one of the key parts. I didn't spend a lot of time on that, but I did other presentations that really drive that point home. It's really about location and giving them the open space and it's yeah, like I said, this was the picture that, and I knew when I saw that picture, I knew that I was doing the right thing, because it was, sure, everyone wants purple martins in their own yard, you know, but when you can bring it to public sites like Turtle River, that's been struggling for many years, and I'm so grateful for them and the generosity that the Friends of Turtle River had a couple of years ago when we replaced one of their housing units with a little upgrade, and also with the City of Grand Forks and the Greenway of Grand Forks for allowing me to put that house up on the Greenway. I think it's important to get purple martins in front of people, because we don't know what their future is. You know, that's why we're doing the research that we're doing. We're wondering what we want to, you know, why they are in a decline in Minnesota, where the populations are going, why aren't they surviving, and you know, that's really the important thing, is keeping that population around. And I thank Grand Forks Audubon again for giving me a platform to speak about something as important as purple martins.
Do you need to, like on the pole, do you need to have like a baffle to you find raccoons or anything climbing up the pole?
Yeah, there are stove pipes that you can put around them. You can put, I've seen 5-gallon pails around them, or you know, just the baffles like you do what you see on a bird
Squirrel baffle.
like a squirrel, yeah, squirrel baffle. I don't have, you know, on mine, I don't have any baffles around mine. I know that's kind of playing with danger, but I have two poles. So total failure is if you have one pole and all of your birds are dead. You know, tornadoes come by, you know, and wipe out people, you know, that way, you know, a windstorm can wipe out people that way. You know, if you can just get some survivors, you know, they might come back, you know, if you get some survivors, they're likely to come back. But if you have a total loss of housing and fledglings, that there's no fledglings, it's likely or possible that they would not return. So that's why, I mean, the likeliness that, you know, a raccoon or whatever would get both of my units, you know, it's a little less likely. It's a risk, and it's a calculated risk. You know, the right thing to do is to really say, put a baffle on, you know, make sure that you're not, you know, putting those birds at risk. On the Greenway, I have one. I have seen that baffle pulled off a few times. Now, whether that's somebody that was just curious and just, you know, trying to climb the pole, you know, curiosity, that could be, or it could have been, you know, a raccoon, or heck, it could have been a bear, because it was last year around the time that there was a bear in town, you know, that just pulled that baffle off, and you know, it was pulled off, and I put it back on, and you know, it's just.
Well, anytime you're pulling down a house to look at anything and you want some company, let us know.
Yep.
We'll get a message out. I'm sure a lot of people like to see that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
You put some nesting material into the house in spring?
Yep. I put cedar dog bedding in mine, and the reason I do is because cedar dog bedding has a natural insecticidal property to it. You know, it's all natural. Pick it up at a pet supply store, and I grab a handful and just throw it in. I've also used straw, weed-free straw, and especially out at Turtle River, where you know they've got, you want to make sure that you're not using, you know, straw from, you know, sources that are spreading weeds. Just a handful of oats straw, and stick it in and it gives them a base to build their nest. Subadult birds, those are birds that fledged last year and came back, and there's the first year that they're gonna nest. Those are the birds that that don't really know how to make a nest, to be honest with you. They will lay an egg on the bare floor, and it'll be rolling around in there, and I'll put stuff in it, and they'll throw it out, and they'll put their egg back on the bare floor, and it's like, what are you thinking? But that's just what they do. So I always try to put enough straw in there that it at least gives them a base, so that that egg doesn't roll around in case you get those young birds that don't know really how to build a nest at all. Oh.
No, one thing that was interesting, I was reading a little bit before, after we talked, actually, I got interested. And one thing that intrigued me is that the transformation they say on North American birds, from natural habitat to being entirely dependent on man-made habitat, was completed around the turn of the century, 1900. So it's been quite a while since kind of in the eastern portion of the range. They talk about in the western and some mountains, there's still some that,
yep, there are.
There's spots where there's natural nesting, but I just thought that was interesting that it's just completely, it's all man-made habitat.
What I found interesting is, the Audubon statement about purple martins and the taverns that they used to put purple martin houses up.
Yeah.
And what I found interesting is when I was in, I think it is it Macintosh or
McIntosh.
okay,
North of the base there?
west of they've got a gas station. There's a Tesoro station, and I got out, filled my gas, and I heard purple martins, and I'm like, where are these purple martins? And I looked, and I was like, there's no purple martin house here. And then as soon as I was getting into my car, I heard it again, and I said, okay, there is a martin here. I got out, and I looked up, and in the R of the Tesoro sign was the purple martin nesting. And I had never seen anything like that before. It was just amazing, because of that R is white, and that whole, the R is the backwards crescent, or the sideways of the crescent is the closest thing I could come up with. But, I'd never seen anything like that. And I was going to stop there last summer, but I didn't have time to stop. But I'd be interested to see if they come back to that site year after year.
There were martins associated with a service station on the east side of Devil's Lake years back. I don't know where they were in their nests, but it's definitely with the station structure somehow.
Well, yeah, this is east of Devil's Lake. Yeah, I can't remember. It starts with an M. Michigan. There we go. That's it. Michigan, North Dakota. Yeah, it was the Tesoro station there.
Listed somewhere on the base at one time. Some part of the building structure.
So yeah, amazing birds.
We have a cabin at Long Point on Lake Woods, and there are hundreds of
In our artificial nesting area, or are they?
well, people have houses, but I think you were talking about the sand and the shells and stuff. I suppose that's there, and the water, but the houses don't have 50 feet clearance around them. But it seems they're not mine.
Yeah, I mean, there's, these are wild animals, so there's always exceptions to the rule. Like I said, that you can try to attract them, but you can also battle, sparrows for 20 years and not attract them. And
and there are no house sparrows.
Yeah, and that is a blessing when you have a location like that. House sparrows were introduced, same thing as, I think they came over on the ships more so than the starlings that were actually introduced because of the Shakespearean enthusiasts.
You were asking about Gonzalo. I was able to attract 6 parrots for using Gonzalo, but I did the same thing in Bourne and Canadian. So
You know, I've tried, and I know some years it didn't boil because Susan Martin showed up. There was also a house sparrow trying to build at the same time. The sparrows went out.
For me, the key was getting the right bird, and that was a female that decided to stay. Even she decided to stay, the male stayed, and then they attracted them. That's not very good.
That's an interesting point. They say that the female selects the nest, the male is just an accessory.
I was just thinking about the sparrow thing.
Yeah.
You know, something that's in the R. I think they might have missed it in the R because it was like the closest to an 8-box type thing. I mean,
Could be that
from
too.
their perspective, it's like there's a wall,
Yeah.
and then there's like the wall of the building,
Hmm.
and then there's the lip.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, that's the other wall, and then the top and bottom.
Yep. Could be.
It's like kind of like a box.
Is there any, with the gourd versus the box, any,
Preference.
Yeah.
If
You don't see
you
any difference in success?
No,
or
I
what
mean,
you'd like
both
to
are
look
very
at?
successful. I do not recommend plastic houses, but I recommend plastic boards. Plastic houses are basically like the easy bake oven for markets.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the one on the Greenway, that's an aluminum house, stays very nice, stays very cool. That's a very good structure, so I've used natural gourds, artificial gourds, Western red cedar, and aluminum. And I wouldn't even try the plastic housing out there. The most important thing with housing, visit the PMCA if you're looking for quality housing. They are a research-based organization. They're going to be able to get you, into quality housing. We also started just a small shop, shop purplemartindakotas.org. We've got a few select items. We don't have the selection that they do. We're not running, a big organization. But we've got a few of our favorites out there. Basically, all of the 100% of the proceeds from that goes directly into into the research, so that we can fund events. We do once a year event. You come and we have door prizes and stuff like that. So that's really we're just trying to keep people interested in purple martins in the Dakotas. The rest of the nation, they've got purple martins more than they can probably even deal with. But up here in North Dakota, we're wondering where they're at, and people aren't really too aware of purple martins because some people haven't even ever seen them. So that's really we're really focusing on the local things, the local issues. If you live down in southern states, they have to deal with rat snakes. They deal with things that we don't deal with up here. So why even talk about those things? There's a whole number of different issues that they have in different parts of the United States. So that's the real neat thing about our organization is we're really just focused in North and South Dakota.
Thanks again, Barry.
All right. Thank you.